Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Facepalm Studio. And on today's Make It Monday, we are going to be kind of coming back to our Blender Basics series a little bit and how to create a turntable animation for showing off your images and your hero pieces. So, this is a big part for development and portfolio making. So that's why I kind of wanted to include it in our basics series as well as part of just something so that way I can show people how to kind of work. There's a lot of different ways to be able to make these kind of turntables, but I found a kind of good system that works for me, and I wanted to show you guys how would be good for you guys to try it. So if you guys want to continue on with me, we can make a turntable. All right, so here we are in Blender, and we have my Halloween book that we worked with for Halloween. If you guys haven't checked out that video, make sure you go see that. Um, this was a fun project to work on, and I wanted to kind of show off the book a little bit because it didn't really get a whole lot of view. So you can see here that I also created a little pedestal that we're going to be working with for just the rendering purposes, so that way we have something to kind of send around. But we're going to start here with our base scene. So if you guys take a look in my scene collection over here on the right hand side, I don't have anything except for my book and the cylinder in the scene. And that's how I'm going to kind of start because I don't want to use any of the other actual scene lights. I'm going to be making a studio light setup with a backdrop that is going to be used to render the scene for a studio kind of environment. So first things first, let's prep our model. So you already saw I have textures applied on this already, which is good. And I already created a default material with a little bit of a darker shader on here. And I actually am going to brighten that up just a tad because I feel like it's a little dark. Let me go ahead and bring that up here. Just going to bring that value up just a tad here. And so that's just something so that way our object has something to cast shadows onto as well as our ground plane. So let's go ahead and create that plane. Oh, actually, no, first I want to, so let me take a step back. I appended this file with my book model to bring it in from my current render so that way it held all of the settings that I had. Now, when I do that, though, it does contain the same transforms of when I used it. So I want to reset those transforms so that way it is centered in on this object. So to do that, you're going to select the object you want to modify. You go to the Object tab. We're going to do Apply, and I'm going to do All Transformations. And that's going to set all of these back to their default values. What I also am going to do, I'm going to go Object, Set Origin, and I'm going to do Origin to Geometry. And that's going to set it to the center of my object. So now that is centered. And I also want to do that with my pedestal here as well. So I'm just going to go to Object, Set, Apply, All Transformations. You can also do that with Control A, All Transformations. And so now that's zeroed out as well. And what we're going to do here is we're going to grab both of these using Shift. And I'm going to parent this object to this object. And you'll see why in a little bit. So we're going to go to Object, Parent, Object. And now if I go to rotate this, you'll see that it is now moving with that object. And it is based on this parent's center point. So if I do R and I do Z, now we'll be able to rotate our object in the Z axis and be able to get that turntable kind of look with our pedestal here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our backdrop. And this is really easy. I'm going to go to a side view here. Actually, let's do it from, let's see here. We'll just do it from the top down. I'm going to do Shift A. We're going to add a plane. We're going to scale it out quite a bit. And it looks like it grabbed our default material here. It's looking kind of dark. Oh, well, it didn't grab the default material. It's just dark because of how things were looking with the scene there because we don't have any lights in yet. So we're going to scale this out quite a bit. I'm going to hit go into edit mode here, and I'm just going to grab these edges, and I'm going to scale those out. Oops. Grab this edge and this edge. Oh, I guess it doesn't want me to do that. Can I do it like this? Good. All right, so we're going to grab those out. GX. I'm going to bring those outwards. And I'm also going to bring this front one up. I want to do Y. GY. Oh, now I've done it. Y separates objects and separates parts. And we didn't want to just do that. We want to hit G first, then Y to lock it to the axis and bring it back. So now we have our ground part. And next we're going to grab this back edge. I'm going to move it back just a little bit on the Y. Then I'm going to extrude it out on the Y as well. And then what we want is I'm just going to bring that up in the Z. Now it might be a little high, so we're just going to kind of bring this back up Y. Kind of like that, so it's up and down. And then I'm going to create a bevel on this edge here. So that way we're kind of creating like an infinity plane. So we're just going to give that a number of segments. And I'm actually going to make this a little bit larger, I think. So let's grab the object and we're just going to scale that up a little bit more. And then I'm going to shade that smooth. So now when we come in onto our object, we have a infinity background that will be our center focus point that will be renderable with our camera. So let's add our camera to our scene. We're kind of going in order of the things we need to kind of get the angle and things that we want for this. So we're going to go ahead and add mesh, camera, and then on the keyboard, we're going to hit Control-Alt-0, and that is going to set our camera to our viewpoint. And I actually want to lower things down a little bit, so I want to give us a little bit more of an angle. And so that's going to be our camera view for this. So that's already a good start. Next, we want to add some lights into our scene to be able to make sure that this comes out as a good render. So I'm going to open up a second view here. I'm going to change this one to our rendered mode. So we're actually going to change that to rendered, which is what it's in. And let's add some lights. So I'm going to start with a plain light. So we're going to add a light, and it's going to be an area light. We're going to move this into position. And I kind of want it to be kind of behind our camera. And I want it to be angled up at our object. So you kind of get an idea of what I'm looking for here. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring that straight on. Kind of like this. So let's see if I can't grab that a little bit. Well, now why did I do that? I'm going to point it straight onto our book. We'll have it there. And we're going to turn this up. I tested some values earlier, and I would turn that up to 2000. So now we're starting to get some light in our scene. But you'll see here that now things are still kind of back in the dark in the back end here. So we're going to want to add some more lights. That's going to be our fill light. So this is what's called our key light or our focal light. Now we're going to add our fill, which is going to be an area light. And we're going to add what's called the hair light or the backlight, which is going to just be kind of like a side light. That's going to just add a little bit more definition to the shape. So we're going to add another point light here. Go ahead and bring that out and back. And I'm going to just go ahead and GZ. I'm going to bring that down just a bit. And I want to put that at, I'm going to put that at a 3000. Ooh, maybe that's a little too much. So I'm going to actually probably bring that light up a little bit more. Now that I'm looking at it like this, I want it to kind of fill that scene in. So you can kind of see that we added a little bit more light in there. Oops, I moved the whole background. Let's go ahead and move that over just a bit like that. And I'm going to grab, let's go ahead into the light settings, and I'm going to turn that radius up, I think, actually. So that way it kind of spreads that out a little bit. Okay, so we're getting an idea of what our object looks like. We're getting our reflections. We have some shadows. But we still kind of want that extra light there. So let's go ahead and add one more point light. This one's going to be just kind of at a lower value. I'm going to have it down and kind of over to the back here of our scene. So that way it kind of fills that void here. We're going to turn that up to 1000. Just kind of fills in that space in the back and just kind of evens out some of that lighting. And now actually, I think I also want to double check our planes material here. we're going to add a material to this, and I want this to be a full value of white. So that way we have a fully white background that we're working off of here. And you can see that the curves aren't really affected by that shadow. It just looks like we're working on an infinity plane. All right. So the next step in this process is we need to animate this. Now I've found, since we parented these already, the easiest way to be able to rotate this is going to be just using the effects of this object. So if we go ahead and take a look here, we're going to be rotating this on the Z, so that way it goes in 360. And we're going to want it to do it for the whole time that we want it. And I'm going to do 90 frames for this. So that'll be 30, 60, 90. That'll be for 3 seconds of animation, because we're going to do it in, what's it called? 30 frames per second. So let's go into our render settings really quick and set some of that. So we're going to change the frame rate to 30. Actually, I'm going to change it to 29.97 because that's how Premiere edits out. So we're going to try to keep to that resolution. No, I'm going to keep it at 30. And we're going to change this to 90. And I think that's where we want this for now. Oh, we're going to set a path for this. So I'm just going to go to my working disk. We're going to go to our, let's see here, asset collection Halloween. I'm going to make a new folder. It's going to be book turntable. And I'm going to call this render, and this will be important in a minute because I'm also going to make a folder here as well. New folder with the same name, book turntable _ wire. So that way we can have a wireframe version. So that way we could kind of show the difference in the model. So we're going to go through that here next. But first we're going to do the render. So we're going to accept that. So now we have our file path set, and these settings are fine there. Let's go back into our render settings for a second. We're still looking at our camera, and I think things still look pretty good here. If we drop into some of our film settings here, I'm wondering if we can't just bring this up a little bit more. Okay. So now that we have a base render here, I'm just going to render a single image, so that way we can kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like. Oh, I didn't set the time for the render. That's important. I'm going to change that to a minute, 30 seconds actually. So we can kind of get an idea of what we're working with. So we get into semblance of shadows, and we can see our object pretty well. So we're going to go ahead and exit that out. And let's go ahead and change that setting here. We're going to do this for 30 seconds. At the settings we have, this should be able to render pretty well for what I'm working with. If this is your own personal model, it may take longer, it may take less, but it really depends on just how you're working in the scene. So next we're going to animate this, which is what I started doing, and then I got distracted by the extra settings. So we're going to go ahead and select our cylinder, our pedestal. We're going to go to the object properties, and I'm going to right click on the rotation value, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. And you'll see here on our timeline down at the bottom, now we have a keyframe that's set here at frame 1. Next, we're going to go all the way to frame 90. And we're going to set another keyframe, but this one's going to be at 360 degrees. So that way it goes all the way around. And we're going to go ahead and insert a keyframe there. So now our object is going to rotate. But you'll see here when I hit play, it kind of slows and then starts and finishes again. And actually, I'm going to do this at 90 frames. I want this to be negative 360 degrees, actually. So it should rotate that way. That's the way I want it to go, counterclockwise. So, but you'll see here that it slows and then slows to a stop. Now, for these kind of animations, we want it to loop. We want it to loop properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this. Actually, we'll just add another window down here. And we're going to change this to the graph editor. And so you'll see our animation here. Maybe. And so right now you'll see that it comes to a start. and it kind of slows into it. We want that to be a direct. We want that to be direct. So we're going to come over here. We're going to select the 2 points. We're going to go to the not normalize. Where is that option? Ah, here we go. We're going to go and select the keys. Then we're going to come over to the handle type. No, sorry, the interpolation mode. And then we're going to want this to be linear. So now it's going to be a straight line. So when we start at frame 1, it's just going to start spinning at the same rate. And that way we can loop the animation. You can see as it did there. Looks good. All right. So next is the fun part. We get to render. But there is one other step that we get to do. So let me just go ahead and close these menus up. So now we're ready to render. And if you go back to the rendering video about the glass, it's the same setup. You'll be able to go here, you'll say render, you'll do render animation, and it's going to start rendering those 90 frames. But we also want to create a wireframe turntable for this as well. To be able to do that, we want to do a few setting changes here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off of shader mode for a second. And this is the point in the video where you're going to be able to render your project. It takes time. I think when I spec'd this out earlier, mine took for 30 seconds. It took about 45 minutes, 90 minutes, maybe, what was it? Yeah, 90 frames, 30 seconds. Yeah, I think it took about 90 minutes for it to, no, backwards, 90 frames, 45 minutes for it to render fully. So if you guys want to take some time to render this out, I'm going to just show you guys how to set the wireframe view, because that's going to be a little bit quicker. And then we can kind of continue and pick up at the end where I'm going to show you guys how to set up the turntable in Premiere. So let's go ahead and show you guys how this part works. So we got the wireframe here, but we don't have the wireframe yet. We're going to turn that on. So let's go, and I'm looking at our camera view. This is our viewport. And what we want to do here is we want to check a few options in our viewport overlay, so that way we can see, so that way we can get our wireframe mode on. So easy as that, turn wireframe on. Super easy. What we also want to do is turn everything else off. So I'm going to turn off the grid, turn off the floor, turn off the text info, 3D cursor, annotations, and then any extra object type things that we have. We only want the wireframe. We're also, when you're ready to do this, you're also going to hide your base and your background, and you're just going to leave the lights in the scene. So that way we get the same shadow effects with our render. You're also going to want to make sure that you go back to this output and change it to this wire mode the wire turntable that we made. So that way it doesn't overwrite what we already rendered out. And you also want to make sure that you have RGBA turned on for this. So that way we can actually get the actual alpha background for this. Let me just make sure we have that set. We're going to do that as a PNG. That should be fine. You could also probably do AVI raw in this case, but we're going to leave it as PNG because that should give us the alpha. And now we are ready to render this wireframe out. So to do that, you'll go up to, instead of render, you want to just render the viewport. Since we already turned everything off for the viewport, that's what we want to see. So we're going to go to View, Viewport Render Animation. When we click this, it's going to write the frames to our main folder. You'll see here, and it goes pretty quick. Okay, so now if we go and check our folder out, let's go into Halloween, wire. Now we have 90 frames of the rendered animation, and this should have an alpha background. Does not. Why does it not? This to me earlier too. Ah, transparent. I think that's what we need to turn on. World background is transparent. There we go. Okay, so that's what we needed to turn on. So to turn on the transparency for that, we're going to re-render this. You have to turn on that transparent background. World background is transparent for compositing the render over another background, which is exactly what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and start back at frame 1. And we're going to go ahead and view viewport render animation. That's the alpha background that we're looking for. Perfect. Excellent. So now when we go and look at this, back in our settings here, we can go ahead and Halloween wire. So now we have an alpha background image, which is exactly what we want. So that way we can overlay that onto our turntable. So if you are now finished with your render and you rendered out your wireframe, let's jump over to Premiere and we should be able to get this working for the next step. All right, let's get Premiere open. All right, now we're getting into Premiere. Let's start a new project. And we're going to call this book turntable. Underscore turntable. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to where we have our files at. Mine are on my working disk. We're going to bring in both of those folders here. So we're going to bring in our, so I screwed up. I forgot to change the file path. So I need to bring this in. And so you select the first one. And then you should be able to do it as a image sequence. Oh, actually, no. We're going to just make it blank because we'll have to do the media after. So we're going to just start here. It's going to create our new project. Now we import the media because this way we can do it as an image sequence. So let's go to our working disk, 3D modeling. Asset collection, Halloween, book timbre render. So this is our wireframe. So we're going to go ahead and import that. And you see this little button here, this button here for the image sequence. We're going to go ahead and select that. Let's import that. And I'm just going to rename this to wire. And we're going to grab this one, image sequence. And we're going to rename it to render. Couldn't think of the name. All right, see here we got it at 60 FPS. Should be 30 FPS, but it's importing it at 60, so we'll have to see what it does. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring the render in first. So right here, if we hit play, you see that it goes through, it renders out, looks good. Pretty dang good. So now if we want, we can go here and we're going to go all the way to the end. Then we're going to jump back one frame. We want this to loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this here. And now I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to delete that last frame. I'm going to paste that back in. So now we have a seamless loop. You'll see that there. And it is going a little fast. That's because it's not at the right speed. So what we can do now, let's copy these. And let's actually make a sequence that is the correct frame rate. So we're going to go ahead and change that to 1080p 30. Paste that back in. And now we'll see here it is going to be 2 seconds. 3 seconds, which is what we were looking for. So I guess we did, what was that? 3 seconds about here. A few frames off. That could be from interpolation in the render and stuff like that. But it looks pretty good. It is going a little fast, so may have to slow it down. And the easiest way to do that, and that's probably because we only did 90 frames. So typically you'd probably want to do 120, have a quarter mark, halfway mark. Halfway is going to be 60, and then the 2 more. 90 was just a fair number for me to be able to let us see this. So maybe 120. Not enough time to re-render it now. But what we can do here is we can delete this now because now we have it cut the right way. And let's do a speed and duration. And we're just going to change that to, so I want it to be longer. So we're going to change that to 50%. We'll say okay. Now it's going to go slower. Heck, we might want to even go more than that. Let's see here. Speed and duration. Let's do 25%. That's a bit better. That's almost a little too slow. Let's keep it at 50. So now we can just go ahead and do the same thing again. We'll copy and paste. Maybe. And now we'll have this in here. Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to add one more. And then for this last one, though, we're going to bring in our wireframe. And we're going to overlay our wireframe on top of this. So we also have to make sure that this speed and duration is also 50%. And you'll see here how it transitions into the wireframe. And actually, we might want to do that for this one. So that way it goes into it and that comes back. So let's move this up and we're going to do a transition into that. So let's go into our effects here on the right. It's going to be a video transition, and I like doing it as a dissolve. We're going to do it as a cross dissolve. See how that looks here. Well, that happened very fast. So let's Z that out. Let's try getting it on both of those frames. Why is it only going on the one? Well, let's see here. We want it to go center at cut. Maybe because there's not enough frame information. I want it to be a smooth transition between the two. Let's see here. Maybe additive. It just changes so fast. Let's do a cross dissolve. Let's bring it out a little bit. Oops. Can we increase the length of the cut? We want to go for like 6 frames. And now let's do, there we go. Okay. So we see it transform into that. So we get one rotation, it fades. We do want to keep that background. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring that back a little bit. Will give us that last, well, let's see here. We want to keep our background. As you see, it kind of flickers a little bit. So maybe let's bring that over a little bit. Make it a 1 frame churn. There we go. That's a little bit less noticeable. Perfect. And now we want to do the same thing here at the last change. So that way it's a seamless change over. So let's go ahead and we're going to copy this. And we're going to come to the end and we're going to paste it. Maybe. Looks like we have to do the same thing again. So let's make it like 8 frames. And we're going to center at the cut. This time we want to go back the other way though. Good. And that should be the start of the... So it pauses a little bit there. Actually, there we might be able to just let it do its thing. Let's see. Should be the start. But shouldn't. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't cut that last frame off. We need to make sure we cut that last frame off there. So let's make that all the way to the end. We'll take 1 frame off. That's what it was doing. So let me add that back there. Let's delete that. No, I just want to delete the effect. Now what I do? Okay. So let's delete the effect. Take that back a frame. Now we'll bring this back a frame. And then that should flow into itself. Good. That's why we were getting a little bit of a skip there. And then we want to do the same thing we did before. Center a cut. And we want to make it a little longer. and then bring it over this way. There we go. All right, and that's our turntable. So and now all we have to do is export it. So we can come up here to File and save, because things lagged for a second there. I always get worried when Premiere lags on me. Come on. I'm going to do Export, Media. And this is going to use just the adaptive high bitrate at the regular sequence here. I was going to go ahead and rename this. Book Turntable. And I'm just going to export it using Premiere. Since it's such a short file, it's not going to take that long to export. And it was exported successfully. So that is how you create a turntable like this. And it's looping too. So if you decide to loop it, you can also have it continue. I wonder if we can let's see how it comes out. I actually didn't look and see where that exported to. So maybe I need to check that really quick. Oh, actually, I know exactly where it went. Let's see here. It's going to go to my Facepalm episodes unpublished folder here. So we go ahead and watch it here. It's a nice and easy turntable. And then if you set this to loop, we just get the same loop and animation. Looks pretty good. All right, everybody, so that's going to be it for today's video. If you have any questions about how to make a turntable animation, or if yours is turning out kind of odd, you might need to play with some settings. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below when you go to subscribe to Facepalm Studio. Make sure you check us out on Facebook and Twitter as well. We have those social medias so you guys can ask questions, and so that way we can interact with you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And so until next time, keep creating, save the pain. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.